Captain Kyle Aron stood on the bridge of the Vigilant, gazing at the stars stretching endlessly before him. The cold blue of distant suns sparkled like fireflies, but there was nothing warm about the void. He felt the weight of what was coming. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak waited. They were relentless, merciless, and horrifying. Humanity had grown proud and confident across the stars, building colonies, trading with alien species, and celebrating technology. Yet now, Kale knew, those achievements would be tested in ways no one could predict. He clenched his fists. His jaw tightened. Memories of the first battle he had ever fought came rushing back. It had been years ago, but the screams of his comrades still haunted him. He had fought beside them once, stood shoulder to shoulder with humans who had shown courage beyond reason, and yet so many had fallen. The echoes of that day stayed with him like shadows that never faded. Kyle's unit was not just a team of soldiers. They were the pride of humanity's new military initiative, a coalition force designed to strike deep into enemy territory. Human soldiers were known for their ingenuity, their unbreakable spirit, and their ability to endure when every rational thought said survival was impossible. They were also known for loyalty, camaraderie, and compassion, even in the darkest of wars. And Kale intended to lead them with every ounce of honor he possessed. "Captain Aron," said Lieutenant Mara Voss, her voice calm but firm, breaking Kale from his memories. She stood beside the holographic map that floated in the center of the bridge. "The fleet is in position. The Vorthak supply lines are exposed. We have one chance to strike before they realize what we are doing." Kale nodded, studying the map. Red markers blinked, indicating the Vorthak positions. Blue markers showed human fleets. The odds were not in their favor. The Vorthak were cunning and powerful, capable of overwhelming the human forces if they underestimated them. Kale had learned long ago that underestimating an enemy was often a death sentence. "We strike at dawn," he said, his voice steady. "Every human, every ally we have will give their best. We do not falter. We do not retreat. And above all, we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." Mara nodded. "Understood, sir." As the crew prepared for battle, Kyle walked the corridors of the ship, passing soldiers checking weapons, engineers making final adjustments to machinery, and medics standing ready for what was sure to come. Each face reflected determination, fear, and hope all at once. Humans were fragile, he knew, but they were also remarkable. In the harshest conditions, they adapted. They survived. They fought. That was humanity. That was why he believed, even in the face of horrors he could barely imagine, they had a chance. Kale's thoughts drifted back to the first time he faced the Vorthak. He had been younger then, brimming with confidence he did not yet understand. His unit had landed on a distant colony under attack. The Vorthak had descended like shadows from the sky, fast and brutal. There had been no warning, no mercy. The first human to fall had been Private Lorne, a brave young soldier who had insisted on charging a Vorthak patrol to give others time to escape. Kale had watched him die, and the scream had pierced his memory like a knife. Then came Sergeant Varek, a towering man with a laugh that could lighten the darkest room. He had tried to protect a group of civilians caught in the chaos. He had held his ground until he could not. Kale had pulled him from the wreckage, but Varek had been beyond saving. Kale had felt rage, guilt, and helplessness all at once. That was when he learned that courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting even when fear threatened to paralyze you. Now, standing on the Vigilant, Kale realized that he carried those lessons with him every day. Every soldier under his command had their own fears, their own memories of loss, but together they formed a bond that could withstand even the most terrifying enemy. The intercom chimed. "Captain Aron, all units report ready." Kyle nodded silently. The time had come. He moved to the command chair, feeling the vibrations of the ship thrumming beneath him. He looked out through the reinforced viewports at the swirling battlefield ahead, imagining the chaos that would unfold in mere hours. He could already hear the echoes of battle in his mind, the shouts of soldiers, the alien screeches, the whine of energy weapons. He drew a deep breath. Memories of Lorne, Varek, and countless others gave him strength. Humanity had survived worse. They had adapted to impossible odds before, and they would do it again. "Bring us in close," he commanded. The ship responded with a low hum, adjusting its trajectory toward the nearest Vorthak station. Kale could see the alien fortifications now, massive towers that seemed to pulse with an unearthly light. These were not creatures that fought like humans. They were precise, cold, and terrifyingly efficient. Yet, Kale reminded himself, no being, no matter how deadly, could match the will of humans who refused to surrender. The soldiers in the hangar bay were preparing to board their dropships. Kale walked among them, giving nods, short words of encouragement and silent acknowledgments. Every human carried their own story of loss and hope. Together, they were stronger than any alien force. He stopped by Mara, who was checking the weapons of her squad. "Remember," he said, "it is not just about fighting. It is about surviving, protecting, and thinking. Use your heads as much as your weapons. Humanity has an edge because we do not follow the rules of the universe blindly. We adapt." Mara smiled faintly. "I won't forget, sir." As the dropships descended toward the planet's surface, Kale's mind drifted again. He remembered the screams of the first battle. He remembered the smell of burning metal, the panic in the eyes of civilians, and the courage of ordinary soldiers who became heroes. And he remembered the vow he had made silently in the middle of chaos. He would never let their sacrifice be in vain. The dropships touched down with controlled precision. Kale led his team out into the heat of battle, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline and fear. Around him, humans moved with purpose, covering each other, improvising strategies, and facing the alien force without hesitation. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they refused to fall apart. The first shots rang out. Energy blasts lit the battlefield like starlight colliding with darkness. Kale moved with his squad, dodging, firing, and giving orders. Every step reminded him of the past, but also of the present. The soldiers beside him were alive, capable and determined, somewhere behind the roar of combat. He could almost hear the screams of those who had fallen before. They were not just memories, they were warnings, reminders, and motivators. They urged him forward, urging humanity forward. He would fight. He would survive. He would lead. In that moment, Kale understood something fundamental about humans. They were fragile, yes, but also unyielding. They could be broken, beaten, and terrified, yet still rise again with courage that no alien force could predict. That courage, that spark, was why humanity had survived this long. And it was why Kale believed, despite everything, that they would survive this battle too. The first wave of Vorthak defenders fell upon them, shrieking, clawing, and relentless. But Kale's squad held firm, improvising traps, using terrain, and most importantly, trusting each other. Every human life mattered, every decision counted, and every act of bravery could turn the tide. As the sun of the alien world rose, casting a pale red light over the battlefield, Kale felt a surge of determination. He would not forget the screams of the past, but he would also not be paralyzed by them. Humanity would fight, endure, and overcome, and he would lead them through the fire, whatever the cost. The battle had begun. The ground shook as Kale's dropship landed on the jagged surface of the Vorthak stronghold planet. Dust and small rocks whipped around the landing zone, stirred by the powerful thrusters. Kale stepped out, boots crunching on the rough terrain, and felt the weight of what lay ahead. His squad followed closely, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. "Stay alert," Kale said, his voice calm but commanding. "We move fast, we stay together, and we watch each other's backs. The Vorthak are cunning, and they do not fight like humans. Expect anything." Lieutenant Mara Voss nodded. Her squad spread out, covering flanks, checking the terrain for traps. The Vorthak were unpredictable, known for ambushing humans with terrifying speed and brutal strength. But Kale trusted his team. Humans could adapt. They could think in ways the Vorthak could not anticipate. And today that edge might save their lives. As they moved forward, Kale could hear distant screeches, a chilling sound unlike anything human. The Vorthak were close. He signaled the squad to halt. Ahead, jagged towers rose from the rocky ground, glowing faintly with alien energy. It was clear this stronghold was heavily fortified. Kale studied it carefully, searching for weak points. "Those towers," he whispered. "Energy nodes. If we take them out, we disrupt their defenses." Mara's eyes narrowed. "We can do that, but it will be dangerous." "We'll need to split up," Kyle nodded. Danger had never stopped humans before. "We split, hit hard, and meet at the extraction point. Move fast, think fast, and cover each other." The squad advanced cautiously. Suddenly, a sharp shriek cut through the air. A Vorthak scout leapt from the shadows, claws extended, eyes glowing. Kale raised his rifle and fired, but the alien moved faster than he expected, striking Private Jarrow's leg before Mara could react. Yarrow screamed, and Kale felt a pang of fear. He pushed it aside, There was no time to dwell on loss now. Kyle charged forward, swinging his weapon with precision. Another squad member covered Jarrow, firing energy bursts that struck the Vorthak with a flash of sparks. The alien shrieked again and fell back, but more were coming. From the shadows, dozens of Vorthak emerged, moving in unnatural ways, their bodies twisting, limbs striking like blades. The humans fought with everything they had. Kale ducked a swinging claw and returned fire, aiming at weak points in the alien's armor. Every soldier beside him acted with purpose, improvising traps, using debris for cover, and helping each other. Even in the chaos, humans displayed creativity that the Vorthak could not anticipate. Private Jarrow, despite his injured leg, crawled behind a rock and aimed his weapon, striking another Vorthak with deadly accuracy. Mara coordinated the squad, moving them efficiently through the battlefield. Kale could see the sparks of courage in every soldier, each action small but critical. And then the screams began, not just from the enemy but from humans. Kale's ears rang with the sound of comrades falling, the sharp cries of pain that echoed across the battlefield. He had heard this before, and yet each time it was as sharp and terrible as the first. But he could not falter. Not now. He pushed forward, rallying his squad. Keep moving. Cover each other! We are human and we survive. They reached one of the glowing towers. Kale could see energy pulsing along its surface, a lifeline for the Vorthak defenses. Mara set charges while the others kept enemies at bay. The Vorthak shrieked and attacked, but Kale's squad fought as one. Jarrow, despite his injury, struck a decisive blow, sending a Vorthak crashing to the ground. The tower exploded in a burst of alien light, knocking back several enemies and disrupting the defensive grid. Kale felt a surge of pride. Humans had done what no one expected. They had used their brains, their courage, and their cooperation to turn the tide in a small but critical way. Yet the victory was fleeting. From the shadows, larger Vorthak warriors emerged, their armor harder, their attacks more violent. The squad retreated toward a rocky ridge, using every human advantage, knowledge of terrain, clever traps, and unorthodox tactics. Kale knew they were outnumbered, but he also knew humans were adaptable. Every challenge, every strike forced them to think faster, fight smarter, and endure longer. Amid the chaos, Kale noticed something strange. The Vorthak did not seem coordinated. They reacted, but they did not anticipate. That was humanity's edge. Thinking, adapting, and feeling in ways the Vorthak could not understand. Kyle relayed orders quickly, moving the squad to positions where their ingenuity could have maximum impact. The battle raged for hours. Humans fell, yes, but every loss was matched by ingenuity and determination. Soldiers used debris as cover, rigged traps, and worked together to hold back waves of Vorthak attackers. Kale moved like a shadow through the chaos, rallying those who faltered, shielding those who were exposed, and finding new ways to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. By late afternoon, the squad had secured a small perimeter. The Vorthak retreated, leaving behind shattered defenses and the fallen. Kyle walked among his team, checking injuries, giving words of encouragement, and silently mourning those who had died. Private Jarrow limped up beside him, breathing heavily. We did it, he said, voice trembling. Kale shook his head. We survived this round, yes, but the fight isn't over, not yet. We need to regroup, heal, and prepare for the next strike. Humanity does not fall because we are strong. We fall when we forget how to stand together. And we will not forget. Mara joined them, wiping sweat and dust from her face. The Vorthak won't wait long. They'll come back stronger. But they don't know us yet. They don't know what humans are capable of. Kale nodded. She was right. Humans were fragile in many ways, emotionally, physically, but they were unyielding in spirit. They fought with ingenuity, hope, and determination. And they learned. Every battle taught them something new. Every loss strengthened their resolve. As night fell, the alien sky glowing with eerie lights, Kale and his team made camp in the ruins of the battlefield. Fires burned, small and controlled, casting shadows on broken rocks and shattered structures. The Vorthak were gone for now, but Kale knew this was only the beginning. He sat alone for a moment, listening to the distant echoes of battle, the soft wind across the jagged terrain, and the quiet breathing of his surviving squad. And then, almost as if carried on the wind, he heard them, the screams of those who had fallen before, his memories from past battles. Kyle closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. It was painful, haunting, but also motivating. Those screams reminded him of why humans fought, why they endured, and why they never gave up. They had fought beside the fallen once, and they would fight again. And every act of courage, every life saved, every human who refused to yield added to a legacy that no enemy could erase. He opened his eyes and looked at his squad. They were tired, battered, but alive. Each of them carried their own fears and losses. Yet together they were stronger than any alien force. Kale felt a surge of pride and determination. Humanity was not defined by strength alone. It was defined by courage, compassion, and the unshakable will to survive and protect one another. Rest for now, Kale said softly. Tomorrow we continue. We fight and we survive. That is who we are. That is what makes us human. And for the first time in many hours, Kale allowed himself a small measure of hope. The battle had been fierce, terrifying, and costly, but humanity had endured. They had fought beside each other, stood together in the chaos, and survived. And that was just the beginning, because the Vorthak would return. And when they did, Kale and his soldiers would be ready. The battlefield lay quiet under the dim alien sky, but the silence was heavy with the weight of loss. Smoke curled from shattered towers, the faint hum of damaged machinery echoing across the rocky landscape. Captain Kale Aaron walked slowly among the remains of his squad's victory, feeling every step press like lead against his chest. The screams of the fallen still haunted him, vivid in his memory as if they had never left. Around him, survivors tended to wounds, patched damaged weapons, and checked one another for injuries. Some stared blankly at the sky, still in shock, while others whispered prayers for friends who would never return. Humanity had won a small victory, but the cost was enormous. Kale counted heads, noting those who would not stand again. Every name he remembered burned in his mind. Jaro, Varek, Lorne, and many others who had given everything. Lieutenant Mara Voss approached him, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "Kyle, they're going to hit us again." "Soon," she said quietly. "We held them off this time, but this is only the beginning. The Vorthak won't forget this." Kale nodded, feeling the familiar knot of guilt tighten in his stomach. "I know," he said. "And I know we're not ready for the next wave. But we will be. We have to be." He gathered his remaining squad members near a cluster of rocks, creating a makeshift command post. There he looked at their weary faces and tried to inspire what he could. Courage. "We are human," he said firmly. "We survive when others would fall. We adapt, we think, and we fight. Not because it's easy, but because it is the right thing to do. Every life we save, every act of bravery, it matters. That is why the Vorthak will never understand us." A medic, Sergeant Lila Wrin, approached with a tray of bandages and stimulants. She had been patching soldiers for hours, her hands steady despite exhaustion. "We have the injured stabilized for now," she said, "but supplies are running low. We'll need to ration carefully until we can resupply." Kyle nodded. "Do it. We make every resource count. We have no choice." As night deepened, Kale walked the perimeter alone. The alien stars cast a pale light over the jagged terrain, shadows twisting like living creatures. His mind wandered to those he had lost in battle. He could almost hear their voices calling to him in the wind, a haunting reminder of the stakes of war. Their courage had been unmatched, their sacrifice unimaginable, and their deaths were not in vain. Kale carried them with him, a living memory of humanity's resilience. Suddenly, a sharp alarm cut through the quiet. Mara's voice came over the comms. "Captain, movement detected. Multiple contacts approaching from the north." Kale sprinted to the observation post. Through the hazy night, he could see them. Vorthak reinforcements, larger and more menacing than before. Their armor glinted in the alien light, claws sharp, eyes glowing with a terrifying intelligence. This time it was not a random patrol, it was a coordinated attack, and the humans were outnumbered. "Form defensive lines," Kale commanded. "Use every piece of cover, set traps, and keep moving. Protect each other." The humans scrambled into position. Kale positioned Mara and her squad on higher ground, giving them a strategic advantage. Soldiers placed improvised barricades and engineers prepared energy disruptors. Humans were outmatched physically, but they had something the Vorthak could not calculate: creativity, courage, and unity. The first wave struck, fast and deadly. Vorthak warriors hurled themselves into the human lines with brutal precision. Energy blasts lit the battlefield, sparks flying as metal met alien armor. The screams came again, piercing the night. Humans fell, but they fought on, using clever tactics to turn the tide where they could. Kale leaped forward, blocking an alien strike aimed at a medic and firing his rifle with steady hands. "We hold, we survive!" he shouted. Every word carried through the chaos, a reminder that humans did not give up easily. Amid the fray, Kale noticed something unusual. The Vorthak were trying to isolate and overwhelm smaller groups, but every time they did, the humans adapted. Soldiers moved unpredictably, created ambushes, and used traps to slow the enemy. Kale realized that even the Vorthak, with all their strength, could not fully anticipate the ingenuity of human minds. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Mara's squad had taken heavy losses. Lila had worked tirelessly, but some injuries were beyond help. Cal felt a familiar ache in his chest, the weight of command, the guilt of surviving when so many others had not. He could hear the screams in his mind, not just from this battle, but from every battle before. They were part of him now, a reminder that courage often demanded sacrifice. As the Vorthak finally retreated under the cover of darkness, Kale and his squad were left battered and exhausted. They had survived, yes, but the cost was staggering. Bodies of fallen soldiers lay among the jagged rocks, the once proud human warriors reduced to silent reminders of the horrors of war. Kale knelt beside one of the dead, brushing dust from the face. "We will remember you," he whispered, "and we will fight on for you." Back at the makeshift camp, Kale addressed the survivors. "We did what we had to do," he said quietly. "We survived, but we must learn from this. The Vorthak are relentless and they will strike again. We must be ready. We must grow stronger, smarter, and faster." Mara stepped forward, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder. "We can do this. We've survived worse. Together, we're stronger than they realize." Kale nodded, feeling a small spark of hope amid the darkness. Humanity had survived countless trials, from the earliest colonies to the battles across distant worlds. They were not perfect and they were not invincible, but they were unyielding. They fought not just for survival, but for one another, for the legacy of every life lost, and for the hope of a future where humanity would endure. That night, Kyle could not sleep. He wandered among the fires of the camp, watching the soldiers, medics, and engineers tend to their tasks. Every life saved, every act of courage reinforced the truth he had always known. Humans were fragile, yes, but they could endure unimaginable hardships. They could adapt, innovate, and inspire each other in ways no alien could predict. He thought of the screams again, feeling their weight in his mind and heart. But this time he did not let them paralyze him. Instead, he let them guide him, reminding him of why humanity fought, why they survived, and why they never gave up. The screams were a memory, yes, but also a beacon, a call to courage, to ingenuity, and to unity. As the night deepened, Kale finally stood at the edge of the camp, looking up at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak were plotting, preparing for their next strike, and somewhere out there humans were preparing too, learning, adapting, and readying themselves for the battles to come. Kale felt a strange mix of sorrow and determination. The battlefield had taken so much, yet it had also shown him the best of humanity. Courage under fire, creativity in impossible situations, loyalty that could not be broken. These were the traits that defined them. And as long as those traits endured, humanity would survive. He returned to the camp, his steps quiet but steady. The surviving soldiers looked to him for guidance, for hope, for reassurance that even in the darkest hour, humanity could rise. Kale gave it to them, not with grand speeches, but with presence, action, and unwavering resolve. "Rest if you can," he said softly. "Tomorrow we rebuild. Tomorrow we fight again, and we survive. That is what we do. That is who we are." And as the alien night stretched over the scarred landscape, Kale allowed himself a brief moment to remember the fallen, to honor their courage, their sacrifice, and the legacy they had left behind. He had fought beside them once, and though their screams still echoed in his mind, he knew that humanity would carry their memory forward, stronger, braver, and unbroken. The dark hour had passed, but the war was far from over, and Captain Kale Aaron, with every survivor at his side, was ready to face whatever horrors awaited, guided by the unyielding spirit of humanity. The sun barely broke through the thick clouds of the alien world as Captain Kale Aaron surveyed the Vorthak stronghold from a distance. The jagged towers loomed like dark sentinels, pulsing faintly with alien energy. Kale's squad, smaller but determined, crouched behind rocks and debris, preparing for what would be the most dangerous mission they had yet faced. "Listen up," Kale said, his voice steady, carrying the authority of someone who had seen countless battles and lived to tell the tale. "We're going in deep. This is not just a fight for survival. It's a strike that can change the course of this war. We target the core of their hive, disrupt their communications and energy supply, and the rest of their forces will be disorganized. We hit fast, smart, and precise, and we cover each other no matter what." Lieutenant Mara Voss tightened her gloves and nodded. "We're ready, Captain. We've trained for this and we adapt. We'll do this together." Kale took a deep breath. Humans had survived impossible odds before, but this mission pushed every limit. The Vorthak were relentless, their technology advanced and their strategies deadly. But humans had one advantage: creativity, courage, and teamwork that no alien could predict. The squad moved forward silently, using every shadow, rock, and ridge to their advantage. Kale led the way, eyes sharp for any sign of Vorthak patrols. They encountered a small group of defenders near an energy node. The Vorthak shrieked, claws flashing, but Kale's squad responded with precision. Jarrow, though still recovering from his previous injury, fired carefully aimed shots that disabled the aliens' movements without wasting energy. Mara's squad set small traps that blocked the Vorthak advance. Kale moved like a shadow, coordinating attacks, rescuing soldiers when necessary, and making split-second decisions that kept his team alive. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the hive. Each step brought new dangers, ambushes, traps, and alien creatures unlike anything humans had faced before. Yet with every obstacle they adapted. They used the environment, improvised weapons, and coordinated their movements. Kale's mind worked constantly, predicting enemy actions, analyzing weak points, and guiding his team through the chaos. Finally, they reached the central tower, the heart of the Vorthak hive. Energy flowed through massive conduits, powering the entire base and coordinating Vorthak forces. Destroying it would create chaos and give humanity the upper hand. Kale's squad set charges around the base while keeping watch for patrols. Every movement had to be precise. Every second mattered. The Vorthak sensed the intrusion and attacked with fury. Huge alien warriors, stronger and faster than before, surged toward them. Energy blasts lit the sky, and the sounds of battle echoed across the rocky landscape. Kale's squad held firm, using every trick they had learned. They ducked behind cover, set traps, and used the alien structures to their advantage. Kale fought alongside his soldiers, his rifle flashing, every shot calculated. He ducked a vicious strike aimed at Mara and fired back with deadly accuracy. Jarrow, despite his pain, held a critical flank, taking down enemies with precision. Each soldier played their part, their courage and ingenuity turning the tide of the skirmish. The battle reached its peak as Kale himself planted the final charge at the base of the central tower. The energy node hummed, glowing brightly, but Kale ignored the fear curling in his stomach. He signaled the squad to retreat, covering them as they moved. The Vorthak pressed their attack, claws and energy weapons slicing through the air. Kale felt the weight of the screams in his mind, the memory of every fallen comrade, the echo of every battle. But instead of paralyzing him, it fueled him. Every step he took was for the humans who had fought beside him, who had given everything. He would not fail them. Humanity would not fail. The charges detonated in a blinding flash. The central tower erupted in energy, sending shockwaves across the base. Vorthak communications faltered, their coordinated attacks scattered, and confusion spread among their ranks. The humans pressed forward, exploiting the chaos. Kale's squad moved with precision, striking at key points, disabling enemy machinery, and rescuing captured humans and alien allies. Each action showcased humanity's greatest strengths: quick thinking, bravery, and the willingness to protect others even at great risk. By the time the dust settled, the Vorthak stronghold was in disarray. The alien forces retreated, leaving behind destroyed equipment and scattered troops. Kale and his squad, battered and exhausted, stood victorious. They had achieved the impossible not through brute force, but through courage, intelligence, and unity. Kyle looked at his soldiers, seeing the weariness etched into their faces but also the fire of determination. "We did it," he said softly. "We've shown them what humans can do when we fight together. But this is only one battle. The war is not over." Mara approached, wiping dirt and sweat from her face. "We made a difference today, Captain. That tower was their heart. Without it, they'll struggle to coordinate. We've given humanity a chance." Cale nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and solemnity. They had won this battle, but the screams of the past still haunted him. He remembered every fallen comrade, every innocent life lost, and every moment when courage had met fear and survived. Humanity's strength was not in their weapons or numbers, but in their hearts, minds, and spirits. As they prepared to leave the planet, Cale took a moment to survey the battlefield. The Vorthak would recover, regroup, and retaliate, but humans had proven something crucial. They could endure, adapt, and fight against overwhelming odds. They could turn the tide when all seemed lost. Cale thought of the people he had fought beside in his past battles, the soldiers who had fallen, the civilians who had survived, and the friends who had shared courage in the darkest moments. He heard their echoes, not as whispers of despair, but as a reminder of why humanity fought and why they would continue to fight. He gathered his squad for the return to the extraction point. Every soldier moved with care, covering one another, ensuring that no one was left behind. They were tired, some injured, but their spirit remained unbroken. Humanity had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. "Remember this," Cale said as they boarded the dropships. "This victory is ours because we fought together, thought together, and survived together. Every life matters. Every act of courage matters. We are human, and that is our strength." As the dropships lifted off, Cale looked back at the alien world, the smoke rising from the destroyed tower, and the chaos left behind. The screams of the fallen, both human and alien, filled his mind. They were a reminder of the cost of war, but also a testament to courage, resilience, and the unyielding human spirit. The victory would echo across the colonies, inspiring hope and determination. Humanity had faced a nightmare and emerged victorious, not because they were stronger, but because they never gave up, because they adapted, and because they fought for each other. Cale allowed himself a brief moment of pride. They had turned the tide. They had shown the Vorthak that humans were unpredictable, courageous, and unbreakable. But he knew the war was far from over. This was only a beginning. He turned to Mara and the squad. "Rest for now," he said. "We have done something incredible today. But tomorrow we prepare for the next challenge. The Vorthak will strike again, and when they do, we will be ready. Together we endure. Together we survive." The dropships ascended, carrying the battered but unbroken squad back to the human fleet. Cale gazed at the stars, thinking of every human who had fought, survived, and fallen. Their screams still echoed in his mind, but now they were a source of strength, a reminder of why humans never gave up. Humanity had turned the tide. They had faced overwhelming odds and shown courage in the face of fear. And Cale knew with certainty that no matter what the Vorthak would throw at them next, humans would endure. They always had, and they always would. The Vorthak fleet had retreated. The battlefield was silent, except for the occasional crackle of damaged machinery and the distant hum of alien energy dissipating into the atmosphere. Captain Kyle Aaron stood atop a ridge looking over the scarred planet. Smoke curled from broken towers, jagged rocks littered the landscape, and the bodies of both human and alien warriors lay scattered across the terrain. It was a scene of devastation, but also a testament to endurance, courage, and the human will to survive. Cale's squad gathered behind him, tired and battered, yet upright and alert. They had survived the impossible, fought against the relentless Vorthak, and achieved something extraordinary. Their mission had not only disrupted the alien stronghold, but had also proven that humans could face overwhelming odds and emerge victorious, not by brute strength, but by ingenuity, courage, and unity. Lieutenant Mara Voss approached, her uniform torn and dirt-streaked. "We did it, Captain. We actually did it," she said, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and awe. Cale nodded, but he did not smile. "Yes," he said quietly, "but we must remember what it cost. Every life lost, every sacrifice. They were all part of this victory. And we carry their memory forward." The squad began tending to the wounded, securing the area, and preparing for extraction. Sergeant Lila Wren moved from soldier to soldier, applying bandages, administering stimulants, and offering comfort. Even in the midst of exhaustion and pain, humans showed compassion. Cale observed this, feeling pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its finest, resilient, resourceful, and unyielding, but never without heart. As the first extraction ships descended, Cale took a moment alone. He walked among the fallen, pausing at familiar faces, comrades who had fought beside him in previous battles, and this one alike. Private Jarrow, who had returned despite his previous injury, waved weakly. Mara caught Kale's eye and gave a small nod. Humanity had survived, but the scars of war were deep. The screams of those who had fallen once and those lost again echoed in Kale's mind. He had heard them, felt them, and now carried them not as a burden alone but as a guiding force. Kyle remembered the first battle he had ever fought against the Vorthak. The loss of friends like Varric and Lorne, and the fear that had nearly paralyzed him. And he realized how far he had come. Not just as a soldier, but as a leader, a human who could endure, adapt, and inspire others. The screams, once a source of fear and guilt, had transformed into motivation, a reminder of humanity's relentless spirit. The extraction ships landed, and Kale's squad boarded one by one. Soldiers helped the injured, carried the wounded, and ensured that no one was left behind. Kyle lingered for a moment, looking back at the alien stronghold. It was in ruins, disrupted and chaotic, but still dangerous. The Vorthak were not defeated, only delayed. Yet humans had proven something vital. They could endure. They could adapt. They could survive. As the ship ascended, leaving the planet behind, Kale gathered his squad. Today we have shown that humanity is unpredictable, courageous, and unstoppable when we fight together. Every strategy, every plan, every act of bravery mattered, and it will matter in the battles ahead. Mara nodded. The colonies will hear of this. Humanity will have hope again. Kyle allowed himself a small smile. Hope was fragile yet vital. Humans needed it to endure, to continue fighting against overwhelming odds and to rebuild what was lost. The echoes of screams would always be there, but they no longer haunted him. They guided him. They reminded him that humanity had survived before and would survive again. Hours later, aboard the human fleet, Kyle convened with commanders from other squadrons. Maps of the galaxy were projected across the bridge, showing human colonies, Vorthak movements, and strategic points. Kale briefed them on the success of the strike and the weaknesses discovered in the Vorthak forces. His voice was steady, authoritative, and filled with conviction. Humanity had not only survived, they had gained an edge. This is more than a battle, Kale said. It is proof that humans, when united, can face anything. We have shown them that our spirit cannot be broken. Every life we protect, every act of courage strengthens us, and that is what makes us human. The commanders nodded, their faces reflecting respect, understanding, and renewed determination. Kale knew the war was far from over, but for the first time in months he allowed himself a sense of accomplishment. Humanity had turned the tide, even if only slightly. They had survived where others might have fallen. Later, Kale walked through the fleet corridors, observing soldiers repairing ships, medics tending the injured, and engineers preparing new strategies. He stopped briefly at the memorial for those who had fallen in recent battles. The walls bore the names of human soldiers who had given their lives for survival, for hope, and for the future. Kyle placed his hand lightly on one name, whispering a silent promise. Humanity would endure, and their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Private Jarrow approached, limping but steady. "Captain, we made it," he said. "We survived." Against all odds, Kale smiled faintly. "Yes, Jarrow, and we will continue to survive. Because that is what humans do. We endure, we adapt, we fight, and we protect each other no matter the cost." As night fell across the fleet, Kale reflected on the journey. From the first battle that had haunted him to the daring strike that disrupted the Vorthak hive, he had seen the worst and the best of humanity. The screams, once a source of terror, had become a symbol of resilience. Every human who had fought, survived, or fallen had contributed to a legacy of courage. Kale realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology, weapons, or numbers. It was in their spirit, the ability to adapt, to think, to inspire, and to endure. It was in their compassion for each other, their willingness to risk everything for the greater good, and their determination to survive despite overwhelming odds. He looked at the stars, countless points of light stretching across the dark void. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak were regrouping, planning their next attack. But Kale knew humans would be ready. They had faced impossible odds before and survived. They had turned the tide once, and they would do it again. Kale returned to his quarters and allowed himself a brief moment of rest. Memories of past battles, fallen comrades, and the screams of those lost replayed in his mind. But this time the memories were not chains, they were guides. They reminded him of humanity's capacity for courage, resilience, and hope. They reminded him why he fought, why his squad fought, and why humanity would endure no matter what horrors awaited. Morning came, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. Kyle led his squad to the observation deck, watching the planets below, the distant stars and the vast fleet preparing for the next chapter of the war. He knew the Vorthak would return, stronger and more determined, but so would humanity. "Remember this," Kale said, addressing the squad, the crew, and all those who would hear his words. "We are human. We endure. We fight. We survive. Every life we save, every act of courage, every sacrifice, it matters. And it will guide us forward. That is our strength. That is our legacy." The squad nodded, their faces reflecting determination, hope, and courage. They had survived the darkness, faced the screams of the past, and emerged stronger. Humanity was not perfect, but it was resilient. They had fought beside each other, survived together, and honored those who had fallen, and that was enough to carry them forward. Kale stood in silence for a moment, looking at the horizon. The echoes of the past were still there, but they no longer haunted him. They were a reminder of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring human spirit. Humanity had faced the impossible, and they had survived. They would continue to fight, to endure, and to thrive among the stars. The Vorthak were out there, waiting. But humanity had proven something powerful. They could face the darkness, adapt, and rise. And with every step forward, every act of bravery, and every life honored, humans would continue to endure. Captain Kale Aaron took a deep breath, feeling the weight of both memory and hope. He had fought beside them once and still heard the screams they left behind, but now, those echoes were a source of strength, a call to courage, and a reminder of what it truly meant to be human. Humanity had survived, and humanity would endure.